Hey everyone, what is going on? Today we're going to be talking counter mentor leadership with my buddy Kelly Riggs. This is going to be exciting. Robbie can't join us. He's a millennial, so he isn't real responsible anyway. I think he scheduled something over the top of this. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But the whole thing is
no. Let's pursue that. I like that. Rarely do I get to win with him. So with him not here, I have a 50-50 shot.
That's it, right? But truthfully, right, we're just being playful. He does have to work and do other things like that. Kelly and I are kind of slackers, so we have time today to chat. But the new book, like I said, Counter Mentor Leadership, it is all about unlocking the potential of a 4-generation workplace. Now, first, Kelly, why'd you write this book, man? Why'd you and Robbie take this on?
You know, it's really funny, Phil, because my son and I have enjoyed a really healthy working relationship since he got out of college. And he grew up in an entrepreneurial household, and he would help me with things that I did as a younger guy. And when he got out there and started interacting in the business world, he immediately, as a young guy, problem, there's always an issue, something like that. And, of course, I'm always telling him about all the complaints that I get from my clients, these millennials, trophy generation, snowflakes, cupcakes, safe places. Can't get them to work, can't get them to come to work, Really interesting. We would have conversations about it all the time. And he would often ask me for advice. I would ask him for advice. And we had this relationship that we later gave a label. We called it counter mentoring. I mentored him, he mentored me. So it kind of countered each other. And we began to talk about the issues, and we saw the problem the same way from two different perspectives. Father, son, boomer, millennial. And we said, so we started our podcast first, as you know, and we started doing our podcast. And then eventually that led us to an agent and to a book deal and those kinds of things. So it really sort of evolved over time, but it seems to have hit a sweet spot out there. A lot of people understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what is most interesting about that is the counter mentoring. I mean, that's really important. I think folks miss that we can kind of mentor up, meaning, level up if we have a, line level to manager, line level to executive, but it's also leveling down, right? Because we all have different gifts and different skills and different things that we're good at, that we understand, and different ways of thinking. So give me one of those examples of when, you did that with Robbie. Kind of walk through maybe when he mentored you a little bit.
Well, let me step back and kind of set it up, because the interesting thing about it is we're at a time and place in history where the younger generation comes into the workplace, Phil, and they actually have something to offer. In other words, it's not just a blank slate. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to learn. They come to work knowing things and understanding how to do certain things through technology and social media and tools and so forth that their boomer counterparts are clueless about. And so the whole idea that, well, listen, sit down, shut up, and I'm the leader. They're like, really? I mean, you can't even operate a cell phone. Are you kidding me? So it's a really unique time in history, and people have begun to pick up on it. And I obviously picked up on it as a dad, that in the business workplace, you had this new generation. When I first started doing what I'm doing now, a dozen years ago, millennials were already coming into the workplace. Now they own the workplace. They are the largest segment of the employee population. And so, I would ask my son questions about what is up with millennials and this, that, and the other thing. I never saw it as a problem where a boomer needed to learn how to manage a millennial. I mean, that's silly. I mean, I'm going to learn some fancy new techniques to put these millennials in their place or whatever. It's really about becoming a more effective leader and learning how to communicate with people below you, as it were, not in terms of value, but in terms of where they fit on the ladder in the corporate world. And Robbie and I would have those conversations. And the more he got into business himself, and then now the last 3 years he's had his own consulting shop, I mean, it became a very productive relationship. So, he came to me, for example, at one point in time. He said, "Dad, you're not going to believe this. I actually had a boomer manager look me in the eye and say, 'Why are we doing this? We've been doing this way for 20 years.'" And he's like, "Dad, they're doing it on paper, for crying out loud. What do I say?" So that was me helping him. But on the other hand, I would be mentoring or working with a client in which I'm talking with a younger millennial employee, and I would say, "Gosh, so many times these millennials, they're talking about respect, but Robbie, their perception of respect is 100% different than mine. I mean, I was raised to respect an authority figure because they were an authority figure. Now you got millennials, first day on the job, they're telling their boss, I'll respect you when you earn it. He's like, oh, well, let me explain what's going on there and what the real dynamic is. And there's just a communication challenge. So it happened a lot. It happened consistently. And out of that, we've obviously created a lot of great stories along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Tons of great stories. So talk to us about that communication thing, because ultimately we all talk, we all attempt to communicate, but often we don't because of different barriers or different beliefs that we have. So talk to me about the different dynamic of a conversation sometimes that happens between a boomer and a millennial, either way.
Well, listen, this is where the magic happens. This is the secret sauce, as it were, because part of our methodology is you've got to come to understand the perspectives of the people you're dealing with. You've got an entitlement mentality that actually exists on both sides of the equation. You know, boomers love to say, well, these kids, these millennials, they're so entitled and they think they got to have a trophy for everything and all that. But, the same thing's going on with the boomer. They're saying, like, listen, I'm the boss and it took me 20 years to get here. I'm entitled for you to sort of bow down and tell me how important I am. And you've got such a disparity between the perspectives of these two generations. The only way you solve that problem is to sit down and have a conversation about it and recognize we're different. I grew up in a whole environment where, 20 years in a watch and you respected people just because and on and on. I know you're not like that. I know that's not your thing. And they're like, yeah, no, I grew up, you earn your respect and I should be able to do anything I want because I've always been coddled and always been told I could. And I mean, that's reality. I mean, Robbie, my son, he loves to point out, and listen, don't tell him I said so. He's actually right. We raised them, so any problems and challenges they might have are probably our fault. So, the entitlement actually exists on both sides, but boomers are sort of loath to admit it.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, I love what you said, though, how, kind of that's your fault, your responsibility, whatever, because you did raise that, right? You helped shape him into who he is, into the man that he is, into the worker that he is. So how come that doesn't always, why don't we accept that?
Okay. I lost you through that whole thing, man. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was talking about, okay, so how, you raised Robbie, right? So right. You raised him to be the man he is. So do we have to start by just accepting that we own some of the responsibility for kind of the next generation's behavior?
Wow. I'm so sorry, Phil. More likely my bandwidth is tanked because you are 100% froze up. Uh-oh. So sorry.
That's okay. Hold on. So let's try.
What a mess.
Yeah, that's right. That's the joy of Facebook Live here. Right? So, or am I dead? Oh, I'm dead. Okay, so we're still kind of live here with Kelly, but hopefully he'll come back. He'll probably reboot. Again, we're talking about the book Counter Mentor Leadership with Kelly Riggs today. So hopefully he'll come back. Kelly, you back? You're back. Yay! So yeah. So talk about entitlement, man. We expect that just the internet's going to work.
Exactly right.
Right? Isn't that the crazy thing?
I'll put it all on me for Phil's sake. I'm in a hotel room in Chicago, having finished an engagement here, and I'm probably not doing that well on wireless. So my apologies.
Oh, no big deal. No big deal. That's a taken for granted, though.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of times, I think that plays right into your book here. I expect that the internet's going to work, but think about air travel even 10 years ago, man. And the whole, internet on the airplane, that was not an expectation.
Right.
So how do we help, give me one way that we help shift the expectation model.
Well, listen, I think even the word expectation is a critical piece of how you mend a lot of the challenges that exist. If you don't align your expectations with your boss or with your employee, either way, if you don't get together and do that, then what happens is you create conflict naturally. Conflict is nothing more than frustrated expectations. I'm the boss. I expect you to be in your seat at 8 o'clock. I expect you to work till 5. I don't expect you to be on your cell phone, all that nonsense. Meanwhile, millennial employees I typically roll in about 8:30. That's normal. I mean, I got to go to Starbucks and have a latte, and I'm gonna be on my phone 150 times a day. That's totally normal. Been doing that for 10 years. And so they're so out of whack that if you don't have a conversation to align those expectations, understand the differences in perspective, and get on the same page, you are begging for conflict. And the sad part, Phil, is it's conflict that can be avoided by having those conversations. Most people just don't do it. And it falls directly on the boomers. It's the leader's fault, has nothing to do with the millennial, except that they're completely different and totally different. But I'm the leader. I'm the one that should be attempting to align those expectations.
Okay. So the leader has got to align expectations, set those expectations, maybe start the conversation. Absolutely. But then what's the responsibility then of the millennial as they kind of come back into that conversation? Because obviously, if we have deadlines, they've got to be met. Right. So you can't just say, well, that's too bad. That's just how I am. How do we help the millennial be even more effective?
I love, there's been a lot published in the last year of millennials running companies full of millennials. And the leader who is a millennial gets really irritated because his millennial employees, don't meet their commitments and don't show up on time. Turns out it's not a boomer thing. It's really human nature to expect that people are going to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver. So, what you want to do in creating that expectation is make sure that you get people's commitment and make sure that they understand. One of the things that we teach managers all the time is to say, listen, it's a decision and consequences issue. Phil, if you decide you don't want to keep your commitments, hey, that's all good, man. I just need you to know I can't use you if you're going to be that way. I need you to commit to the things that you say you're going to do. I mean, I can accommodate a lot of differences in our personalities and our generations and all that. But as Robbie and I like to say, leadership is relational, not generational. So when you create that relationship of trust, then it makes it a lot easier. And when millennials hear that, they understand it. I mean, it's not like you're speaking Greek. They go, dude, I totally get that. If my buddy doesn't do what he says, that irritates me too. So once you get that commitment and you begin to trust each other, then it's really easier to overcome all of those generational issues that would really become non-issues if you're on the same page.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I love what you said about it being relational, not generational. That's so important. And being really clear on that expectation, I would say we have to remove any ambiguity from the conversation, because what a boomer knows is from their past, what a Xer or a Zer knows is from their past. So we need to really be clear on what that expectation is. And I one of the things that I like to do is I always like to ask the follow-up question, does that make sense? Yeah. Do you understand? To make sure that as we close for a commitment, that it really is the same thing, not just lip service.
Oh my gosh, you are so intuitively correct about that. It's interesting because most people really don't understand what a clear expectation is. And I always like to use this great example that people relate to is like when you tell your kids, hey, I need you to clean your room. And now, even if I say, does that make sense? I need you to clean your room. They're like, yeah, absolutely. The problem is it's still completely ambiguous. And here's why. They may not clean it the way I think it ought to be cleaned. And so just the very definition of clean is different. I also have not set a clear timeline. So, I may come back 2 days later and say, what happened to this room? Like, Dad, you just told me like 2 days ago. Oh, 2 days ago? Really? And the other thing is a lot of times they don't understand why. In the work, don't understand why and why it's important. A lot of times they'll run off the rails. My generation, our parents told us to do something, and we asked why. They said, because I said so. That's really a bad thing. I mean, when you tell people because I said so, they'll go, yeah, really? I don't think so. So it's really important for that boomer set in their ways, always done it my way, to understand that when you explain the why behind the expectation, I may not even agree with you. At least I can get my arms around it. That's the big deal.
There you go. Yeah. So we don't always need agreement. We just need to understand a little bit more as we're dealing with generations in order to hit those targets, right?
You bet.
Okay. Cool. So obviously there's a million potholes in this, in the whole generational gap, but maybe what's one of the biggest surprises, Kelly, as you did the research for this and as you've done the coaching over the past with your counter mentorship with you and Robbie, what's a surprise or two that's really kind of been like, whoa, I didn't expect that?
Well, that's a great question. One of the really big surprises for me on the boomer side is, we have perceptions of millennials based on observations. They're different than us, so we make assumptions. And there's often this assumption that millennials don't want to follow the rules, that they can't be coached, that kind of thing. None of the research or even the anecdotal evidence supports that at all. Millennials really want to grow. They want to develop. They love being coached and mentored. They really need that feedback, and they've been so used to getting it throughout their lives that when they come into the workplace and don't get some for a week or two, they'll show up at the boss's office and start complaining. And the boss interprets that as, oh my gosh, you need me to hold your hand and blah, blah, blah. No. It's a human nature thing that they just have it in a larger degree. They want to know how they're doing. And if you tap into that and understand that they're craving that coaching and that mentoring, you find a millennial with a ton of talent, man, they can go far and they can go fast, and you can really shorten the learning curve dramatically. That was a bit of a surprise for me because I had kind of fallen into some of the, the traditional assumptions about millennials.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't we all just want to know how we're doing, though? I mean, that doesn't sound millennial-like to me at all, right? I want to know, how's this going, right? Because I don't want to be 800 yards down the track and realize I'm going the wrong direction.
Absolutely. But although it's counterintuitive, the boomer has grown up in an atmosphere where it was do what you're told, salute, or say yes, sir, no, sir, and go do mindless things. And you're sitting there going, why are we doing this? But when you ask the boss, he's like, hey, just do what you're told. This is need-to-know basis. It's above your pay grade. All this kind of nonsense. But you're right. The boomer always chafed against that, but it was really bad form to question the boss. It was actually, quite frankly, it was considered disrespectful. And that's one of the real problems with in understanding respect. But you're right. I mean, people just want to know how they're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. And even if they don't agree, at least they go, okay, well, that makes sense. Not what I would do, but yeah, I get it. So the more you communicate boomer leader to anybody, but especially to millennial, the better that relationship's going to be. And leadership is about relationships.
Yeah, I totally agree. So if we flip that around, though, sometimes millennials have to lead boomers.
Yes.
So what's, how does that work?
Well, it can be comical, quite frankly, but it is just as frustrating for the millennial leader. Quite often they'll come to me and go, hey, listen, I need some help. I've got some boomers working for me and I don't have a clue. They've been conditioned in their environment and the way they were raised and the workplace they grew up in. But one of the things that we advocate in the book that is just absolutely a game changer for a leader is the one-on-one meeting. It's that weekly conversation with the person that works for you. And the more you open it up and allow people to have that conversation across boundaries, the better it's going to be. Because many boomers will tell you, I don't need that pat on the back. I don't need somebody holding my hand and telling me what we're doing. That's nonsense. I mean, that's a crock. Everybody does better work when they feel valued for their contribution. And when you can tap into that, even as a millennial leader, and tell that boomer, hey, I know that you've been doing this longer than I have and you've been around longer than I have, but I got to tell you, you're crushing it out there, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. You cannot tell me they're not going to appreciate it, and it's not going to have an impact on their work in the future, because it will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the little pat on the back, the little bit of encouragement does go a long way. The whole, no news is good news, unless it's, even with the doctor, right? It gives us anxiety. So why do we believe that, man? I mean, is that truly generational, or is there a way to kind of help flip that belief?
No, I think generationally there is a lot to it there, because people were in that environment where they did work in the dark. I mean, the old adage was mushroom management. I'll let you recount what mushroom management is. Keep you in the dark and shovel crap all over you. But anyway, I think a lot of that is generational. Today's employee, the millennial and Gen Z behind them, they're much more transparent, much more open. Listen, it doesn't mean that they don't do some of the dumb things that every generation does. They still have to grow up. They have to make mistakes. They have to mature as adults and all those kinds of things. But they tend to be far more transparent, and social media and technology has everything to do with that. I mean, I'm telling you where I'm eating every day and taking pictures of my food and every other thing in the world. If I come into a work environment and it's compelled to share everything about your life, even the most private things, on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever. Really? Why are you doing that? It's the way they've been raised. Me, no chance.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think, as we kind of look for a middle ground here, how we can kind of meet in the middle, you mentioned having the conversation, putting that on, I would say put that on the leader, whether that's the boomer or the millennial, to initiate the conversation, then listen respectfully, understand those differences of expectation, and then continue to grow towards each other instead of growing apart. Are those some good steps? Or
great step. And I would suggest this as well. Listen, if you're a millennial and you're watching, you don't have to wait on the boss. I hate to admit it, most boomer bosses are not there. They've never been trained to be effective leader, and they grow up doing what they grew up in, and it's not that good, quite frankly. But as a millennial, you can manage up, as you mentioned earlier. You can go ask the boss, hey, listen, I want to make sure I'm meeting your expectations. Could I get 15 minutes over a cup of coffee or a meeting with you just to make sure that I understand exactly what you want from me, what you're looking for? I think the more a millennial employee understands about what the boss wants, I think the more effectively they're going to hit that mark, and they're going to be a better employee for doing it. It's sad that you have to be the one who initiates it and show more effort and initiative, but it is going to pay off in spades, because they're going to turn around and start saying, wow, you're spectacular. You're meeting my expectations. You're really hitting it out of the park. I think it's a good plan all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, showing initiative is always a better thing than sitting back and waiting things.
Oh, yeah. Boomers love initiative, Phil. So, yeah, that plays into your space completely.
Yeah, so really important. So take the initiative, start those conversations, have those expectation conversations. So, Kelly, as we kind of wrap up here, give us one more tip to help us really along the path, so that maybe as we're 6 months or 9 months into this new way of leading, that we can make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Well, listen, leadership doesn't get done very well most of the time because leaders don't take the time to lead. The most common thing we hear when we're talking about training and development and communication and those kinds of leadership areas, you oftentimes hear people say, listen, I'm working 60 hours a week. I don't have time for this. Here's what I can tell you for sure. It's a pay me now or pay me later deal. You're gonna pay. You can either invest the time proactively to have better relationships with the people that work for you, or you can spend the time to pick up the pieces on the back end, and you're going to have turnover and you're going to have cultural issues and all that kind of thing. I'm going to suggest to you, find time, make time, schedule time to be a better leader. The one-on-one meeting, as an example, is something that most people chafe against. Like, when am I going to have time to have 5 20-minute meetings or 30-minute meetings a week when I'm already working 60 hours a week? You will get that time back and much more, because you'll have a really clear understanding of your people. You'll be building that relationship. You'll already know about the problems, and proactively you'll avoid a bunch of those problems. Invest in your people. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that. And I would add to investing in your people, remember that a problem caught early is likely a problem avoided. If you wait for 6 months, you're screwed.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Cool. Well, Kelly, if people want to get a copy of the book, if they want Counter-Mentor Leadership, if they want to get more of yours and Robbie's insights into this, where can we go?
Well, you can go to countermentors.com. But let me give you a short link, and maybe you can add it in the comments. So that it's cmtr.co/AM book, which is just our shortened link for the book on Amazon. You can go directly to that page. It's available in hardcover, obviously, and in Kindle ebook as well.
Cool. So that's cmtr.co/AM book.
That's it.
Awesome. Go there and then go to countermentors.com, countermentors, mentors.com to pick this up and to learn more from Kelly. Kelly, you're just a delight, buddy. I really appreciate this. Good chat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Phil. Great to be on your show.
Thanks, buddy. All right. So that'll wrap us up here. Sorry we had some technical weirdness, man. That's weird.
I would bet big money it was on my side just because.